Dahlias are arguably one of the most rewarding flowers you can grow. They produce spectacular blooms in a wide range of colors and varieties from early summer all the way to the first frost. But success with dahlias doesn't actually begin in summer. It begins right now with the tuber you're holding in your hand. And if you've ever planted a dahlia that's never sprouted or looked at a clump of tubers wondering where on earth you're supposed to cut, this guide is for you. Today we're going to deep dive into the dahlia tuber anatomy, which one's healthy, which one's non-viable, and how to get the best results for planting. To understand why some dahlias thrive and others fail completely, you must understand the dahlia anatomy itself. Now, a lot of people compare the dahlia tuber to that of a potato. Visually that makes sense, but biologically they're very different. A potato can sprout from multiple points across the surface. Dahlias cannot. In fact, dahlias can only sprout from one very specific region, and this is where most beginner mistakes happen. A viable dahlia division needs three parts: the tuber, the neck, and the crown. The tuber is the large fleshy part, the section that looks a bit like a sweet potato. Its job is simple: store energy and moisture for future growth. Connected to that is the neck, and this next part is critical. The neck is the narrow section connecting the tuber to the crown, and it's also the most fragile part of the entire structure. If the neck snaps or rots, the stored energy inside the tuber can no longer reach the growing point. And that means the plant fails before it even has a chance to start. Finally, at the very top, where the old stem meets the tuber, you'll find the crown. This is the most important part because all of this is where the eyes form. The eye is the future stem of the plant. Without a piece of crown attached, the tuber cannot grow, no matter how large or healthy it looks. And this is where a lot of gardeners get fooled. At first glance, two tubers might look the same size, same firmness, same color. But if one of them has no crown attached, it's effectively blind. The next challenge is identifying the eyes themselves. And honestly, this confuses a lot of people at first glance. In early spring, dahlia eyes are often dormant, meaning they haven't started actively growing yet. At this stage, it can be incredibly difficult to see. So look closely at the crown area. Dormant eyes usually appear as tiny raised bumps or small swollen points at the surface. Sometimes they look almost like little pimples clustered near the old stem. Once the tuber starts waking up, those eyes become active. They swell slightly and often develop pink, green, or reddish tones, making them much easier to identify. And if you're ever struggling to spot them, don't panic. One of the best things you can do is pre-sprout the tubers before planting. Place them somewhere warm and bright for a week or two. As the temperatures increase, the eyes begin to swell naturally, making identification much easier. This step alone can save you from planting non-viable tubers by mistake. Now let's talk about blind tubers, because this is one of the biggest sources of frustration for gardeners. A blind tuber is a tuber that was separated from the clump without any crown attached. And here's the tricky part: a blind tuber can still look very healthy. It might stay firm in the soil for months. It may even produce small feeder roots underground, but it will never grow a stem or flower because it lacks the actual growth point needed to produce a plant. No crown means no eyes mean no dahlias. Beyond anatomy, the overall health of the tissue matters just as much. A healthy dahlia tuber should feel firm, similar to that of like a carrot. Not rock hard, but definitely solid. If a tuber feels mushy, soft, or collapses when squeezed, that's usually a sign of rot. And rot often begins at the tail end of the tuber before moving upward. Now, sometimes a particular rotted tuber can still be saved. If the rot hasn't reached the neck or crown, you can cut away the damaged section using a sterile knife. Then allow the cut surface to dry and callus before planting. Another issue you'll commonly see is shriveling. Slight wrinkling after winter storage is perfectly normal. In fact, many perfectly healthy tubers look a little dehydrated, but there's a difference between slightly wrinkled and completely dried out. If the tuber feels hollow, papery, or extremely lightweight, it may have lost too much moisture to recover. Still, there's sometimes hope. You can try rehydrating mildly shriveled tubers by placing them in light, moist vermiculite for a few days before planting. Not soaking wet, just slightly moist. Too much moisture at this stage can quickly lead to rot. And finally, inspect the neck carefully. This is where one of the most dangerous issues arise, and that's neck rot. It usually looks like a dark, soft, or collapsing ring right where the tuber connects to the crown. And unfortunately, once the neck connection fails, the tuber can no longer transport energy to the growing eye. If the neck is solid, the tuber is firm, and you can identify a viable eye, you're in very good shape. It's also important to understand that you'll generally come across two different types of grown dahlias, the Dutch grown dahlia or the hand-divided single tuber. Hand-divided tubers, often from smaller domestic farms, are typically separated into single, clean cuts by hand, making the eye very easy to spot. On the other hand, Dutch tubers, like the ones we carry, are grown on a massive professional scale and are usually sold as clumps. Because they are harvested and processed by machinery, they might look a bit more complex, with multiple roots joined together for a more rugged, weathered look. It is vital to manage your expectations when opening your bags. Many high-performing tubers may arrive with broken secondary roots or skin that looks a bit ugly, but don't let that fool you. Dutch clumps are powerhouses. They often contain multiple potential eyes and a larger energy reserve, meaning you're getting a very hardy, high-performance start to your garden despite the rougher exterior. And if you enjoy these deep dive gardening guides, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Be sure to follow us because we update our videos every week. Now let's talk about something that intimidates a lot of gardeners: dividing. But before we dive in, here's the secret. You don't actually have to do that. If you have a healthy clump, you can plant the entire thing just exactly as it is, and it will grow into a massive, beautiful plant. Dividing is a simple way to get more plants from one, but it's not a requirement for success. However, if you decide to divide, it can be a little overwhelming, especially when you're looking at a massive clump, wondering where to even begin. The good news is that dividing dahlias is actually much simpler once you understand the anatomy. Every single division needs the same three things we discussed earlier: a healthy tuber, an intact neck, and at least one viable eye attached to the piece of crown. And this is where people often make the wrong cut. If you separate the tuber without the crown tissue attached, it will be blind. Before cutting anything, locate where the crown is and identify the eyes first. Some gardeners prefer dividing in fall immediately after lifting tubers, while others wait until spring when the eyes become more visible. For beginners, spring is usually easier because the swelling eyes help guide your cuts. And don't worry if the divisions look surprisingly small. A tiny tuber with a healthy eye can still produce an enormous plant. If you're ready to start growing dahlias this season, starting with healthy tubers makes all the difference. If you're looking for strong, viable tubers this growing season, be sure to check out our website at wildwoodexpress.com. We currently have an incredible selection available online right now, and we ship all across Canada. Once you've selected healthy tubers, timing becomes extremely important. Dahlias are tropical plants at heart, which means they like the heat and hate the wet soil. Planting too early is one of the fastest ways to cause rot. Wait until the danger of frost is completely past and the soil has warmed to at least around 15 degrees Celsius. And when you're ready to plant, dig a hole roughly 10 to 15 centimeters deep, lay the tuber horizontally with the eye facing upward or towards the center. This positioning helps stabilize the new stems as they emerge. Do not water immediately after planting. The tuber already contains enough stored energy to start growing. If the surrounding soil stays too wet before roots and shoots develop, rot becomes much more likely. Instead, wait until you actually see green shoots emerging from the soil before watering regularly. A dahlia tuber may not look like much at first glance, but it contains everything needed to produce an entire season of spectacular blooms. And honestly, once you start successfully growing them once, it's hard not to become obsessed. And let us know in the comments below, what dahlia variety are you excited to grow this year? If this guide helped you feel more confident about your tubers, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button to follow us for more content every week.